Well, thanks for the introduction, Brad, and also for the reading. And good evening, everyone. It's certainly nice to be here with you all tonight, to be able to share some things together about the topic that we have on the screen. Redeeming the time because the days are evil. And it's a fascinating subject. We're going to unpack it together tonight. Now, as some of you may be aware, I come from a trades background. So some of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight is actually pitched at the tradies or the apprentices that might be amongst us. So just hands up if you're a tradie or an apprentice. No tradies? Yep, there's a tradie, right? Fantastic. I'm not going to pick on anyone. As I was just sitting there before, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to pick on anyone apart from the people in the front row. And then the latecomers sat in the front row, so I thought that's perfect. But not only have I got things tonight about for the tradies and the apprentices amongst us, I've also got some things for those that are going into higher education. So some of you guys might be going or might be leaving school, looking at university, might be going to trade school, might be going to business college or something else like that. So if that's you and you fit into that category, I'm going to talk about some of those experiences. Now, in my occupation, I employ a lot of first-timers, so people that are just newly going into employment, people in there for the first time. So I thought that you guys might fit into that category. You might be looking for your first job, you might have just got your first job, it might be at Bunnings, right? You might say, that's the best thing, the best job I'm ever going to have is Bunnings. Right, so if that fits into you, if you're a first timer or you're looking at at a job, then I'm going to be talking to you. And so if you feel that I'm not talking to you tonight, don't nod off, right? Because I've actually got a little section about nice people, so that must be for you as well. All right. So when I first got this little blurb from the committee about redeeming the time for the days are evil, I immediately went to the second portion of this title and I said, well, are the days really evil? And I thought, well, like for a young person, you may or may not have worked out that the world is an evil place. Then I scrolled through a couple of your old talks and I saw that, brethren like Greg Palmer and people like that have, spent a long time with you guys talking about certain challenges that you'll face. And I thought, well, you guys are smart guys, right? I don't need to sit here the whole night and tell you what you already know, all right? So we're not going to just go through that. But what I'm actually going to do tonight is trying to give you some of my strategies, some of the ways that I am able to go through life. And I really want to give it to you because I learnt perhaps sometimes the hard way. I want to try and give you this knowledge and share it with you, because I think it might make it easier for you when you get your first job, you go to your first university course, or you're standing in front of your boss and you have to give an explanation to what you did on the weekend. So I'm going to try and do that. And I don't always get it right. That's the first disclaimer I want to make. Even though that I will share with you some of the artillery I have in my war chest, so to speak, I don't always get it right. I come on a Sunday morning and I inspect my spiritual armour and I look around and I see, you know what, I've been wounded. I have a scar. The world has penetrated me in some way. So certainly I want you to take on board these things, but understand that you will, come on a Sunday morning and you will find yourself wounded, but it's about trying to make each day count before God. Now, when I look at the world, right, I have a picture of the world. It's a very easy picture for me, but it's the very first picture I have. And I'm going to put you this little clip up, right, and I'm going to tell you a little story. Now, this is how I picture the world. I picture the world as a lion, right? And I'm going to tell you a story. There was a woman, and it happens to be in America because everything good happens in America. But she decided that she wanted to go closer to the lions because she wanted to get a selfie, right? Because that's what you want to do. Young people want to get selfies. So she decided that she would go closer to the lion and get a selfie. It was a very placid lion. They look great, don't they? They're very beautiful creatures, very harmless creatures, she thought. And so she thought that she could go there and pat the lion, grab a selfie, and it would be great for Instagram. You only have to now think to yourself, when you're looking at that video, are you comfortable standing next to the lion? Are you comfortable having a selfie next to the lion? Or are you starting to be perhaps like the woman and start to get a bit of worry? You know, this is not quite what I thought, getting this close. All of a sudden, the potential for the lion to be able to jump out and do some devastating harm is great, isn't it? So we stop the video there. Right? So are you feeling that? Are you feeling that there is a bit of a potential? There is something that's not quite right by getting too close to the lion. That's how I picture the world. I picture the world in this way, and I'll show you why. Come to 1 Peter chapter 5, because this is the illustration that the Bible paints as well. First Peter 5, and we're just going to read verse 8. Here is the advice for us. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, everything that's in the world, is like a roaring lion. It's walking around seeking who it can devour. And so that's the very first picture I have in my mind, is that when I go into my work environment, to go into a social environment, I have this picture about the lion, the potential to rip me apart if I'm not on my A game. I'm hyper alert in certain situations, and we're going to see this, and I want to show you this because when you get into situations in your employment, social engagement with the world, after hours from employment, universities, those sorts of situations, I'm going to give you some tools to help you in these situations. Now, why I impress on you about this imagery is because I thought to myself, when is the first time that I actually felt the world was evil? When did it happen to me? And I'm going to tell you this little story because I think it just paints a really good picture. See, I had a really good friend. He was probably one of my best friends, right? He was a Christadelphian, grew up in a great home. And he was a great guy. In fact, he was very funny. He was more funny than me, right? Which is very hard, isn't it, Richie Benno? It's very hard to understand that there's someone more funny. But he had a great understanding of the truth. He grew up in Sunday school. But one of the things I always knew about him was he loved a bargain, right? If I bought something for $5, he had to go and search it for $4. And if he got something for free, wow, that was just like the best thing. Okay, he got it for free. Anyway, I remember the night that he invited me around to his house. We went into his bedroom and he said, look, what I got for free from the guys at school. And he brought out of his bag this bag of leaves and he said, you know, we should try this. And I remember at the time I thought, well, you know, I made up this feeble excuse that I was a chronic asthmatic and, you know, wouldn't be able to breathe for 10 minutes and that wouldn't be a good result. So I said, no, not for me, right? And anyway, I thought, well, he got it for free, you know, it's just a dumb thing, it'll just blow away. But over time, he sort of did a few more dumb things than funny things, and he sort of started to lose perspective on life. He had a good job, but he struggled to keep his job. He had great friends, but he struggled to keep his friends. And he didn't care about life as much as he used to. And one day, I remember this night, he rang me up late at night and he said, Andrew, I've just burnt my car. And I said, you what? He goes, yeah, I burnt my car. And I said, what'd you burn your car for? And he goes, well, I was cold. I wanted to heat myself. And it was at that moment I thought, wow, he's in a world of pain. His perception on life is so distorted. And so I have actually been with him to hospitals, I've been with him to health clinics, I have been with him, you know, through many scenarios through his life. And so at that moment, I thought to myself, you know what, the world it is extremely evil, because what they gave him was to his weakness. He said, I love a bargain, I love something for free. And the world says, well, if he wants something for free, I'll give it to him because he's going to pay for the rest of his life. And so this is why I think that it's so fitting that we talk about these sorts of things, because I want to show you the pathway in which the world is able to penetrate us so that you can put stop mechanisms in. It's very important. And this story, I'm not saying that, any of you are carrying down that path, but, perhaps it may resonate with you. You might know of a person, you might know of a friend that's not going down the right path in life, or you yourself may be challenged about certain things in life. In fact, this is a safe zone. This is where friends meet in this environment. It might be fair to say that, we're starting to find life a little bit tough, a little bit challenging as the world is touching us. Okay? That's fine. This is what tonight's all about, is being able to talk about how we're going to combat the world. So the next verse I have that I always refer to mentally in my mind is in Ephesians chapter 6. And I want to show you this now in Ephesians 6, because it gives me comfort in understanding how the world works against me. The world is in for the long game. It's not in for the short game. It doesn't come up to Andrew Robson, knock on the door and say, would you like to come to the world? And I say no, and it says, okay, I'll go and find the other door. It's there for the long time. It will knock many times. We have to have strategies against it. So Ephesians 5 talks about redeeming the time because the days are evil. Ephesians chapter 6 gives us the solution. And it's in verse 11, right? Verse 11, put on the whole armour of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the world. Okay? Now I know that the first section of that verse is very important, that we do have to put on the whole armour of God in order to stand. But for tonight, what I want you to do is to understand the word wiles. Okay? The word wiles. It's very important. I have it up on the screen what it means. The methodical art of leading us astray. This is what the world knows about us. Okay? They have a method in which they will entice us away. We're going to see that tonight, okay? It is not a one-stop for them. They will go many times at us. So understand it's a process. It's a process. You won't go from point A to point B without the journey. The world is prepared to take you on a journey. Okay? Now that's a good thing for me, because I understand that whilst I'm on that journey, I might walk with the world 4 or 5 steps and I'm able to pull myself out. Okay? That's what we're going to learn tonight. We're going to learn how we can help each other and pull each other out. Okay, how does this happen? What's the very first step that the world is going to take us on? If this is a methodical art, if this is a methodical way, what's the very first step? Okay? Well, to learn the very first step, we have to go to the very first occasion where this happened. So it has to be back in Genesis chapter 3, doesn't it? Let's go back into the garden, because it's the serpent that gives us the answer to how the world is going to operate in trying to change our thinking. Now this is where I'm going to get some participation from you all, because when I go back into Genesis chapter 3, I thought to myself I could just read the verses all day and all night, but I actually went to school, I learned how to read and write, and so did you. So guess what? You're now going to read, and I'm not, you're going to read verse 3 to 6, right? And then once you've read verse 3 to 6, I'm going to pick someone from the crowd, right? And then I'm going to put it up on the screen, and there's a difference between my version of the Bible and probably what you did, right? So this is spot the difference, okay? So let's just now read verse 3 to 6 in our heads, and then I'm going to pick one of you. I've already got one picked out, so don't think I'm picking on you, but I've already picked you, so that's fine. Okay, Genesis 3, verse 3. And 4. And 5. And 6. All right, you're taking a little bit of time, aren't you? Because you're worried that I'm going to, pick on you. So that's fine. All right, here's my version. All right. What's different? All right, I'm going to ask Seamus Pitcher, right? Great guy, great family, love him to bits, right? Smart kid, very smart kid, right? One of the smartest kids in Southern Youth Group. So I'm told by his parents. Okay? All right, Seamus, no clues, right? What's different? Can't see a 5A, yeah. So I've inserted method number 1, how the world operates, okay? Eve began to have doubts, right? You ever heard that in the world? You ever come home at night and you think, you know what? I'm not really good at this truth thing. I'm not as smart as others. I don't think God loves me as much as he loves Luke Atkins, right? I don't know, These are all doubts. Where do you think these doubts come from? They come from the world. They don't come from God. God says, I love you. In fact, I've given you a gift. I want you to be in the kingdom. I gave my only son for you. God doesn't put the doubt in your mind. The world does. And this is what you're going to be challenged with at university, in your first job, your second job, and your 26th job, right? Is the feeding of doubt. It's the feeding of doubt. And this is where you've got to understand what the world is trying to do, okay? And be strong enough to compete against it. Blow it off. Don't worry about what they say. Understand what you believe. Understand it's part of the process of them trying to tear you down. And so they've now got this thing called artificial intelligence. It's another way, another mechanism of feeding into your doubt. Understand how it works. Overcome it. Put it on your radar so that you understand when it comes. The next strategy I have is this strategy. It's a very simple strategy that I've adopted. Okay? I call it the traffic light strategy. Some of you have learnt and obey traffic lights, don't you? Right? So you sort of can understand this one. Tonight, you're in a green zone, right? Tonight I'm in a green zone. I have good friends who love the truth. I talk about it, the truth. I feel safe. I can talk with my mates. These are green zones, right? On a Sunday afternoon, I have, friends around, friends and family. It's a green zone. It's a good zone, okay? You're free to accelerate, to explore anything in that zone. That's how I feel. I feel safe in that zone. But there's situations when I go into the world and I go into this amber scenario, right? This is where I say to myself, Andrew, you're in this scenario. You might have to be in that scenario because of work, university. You're there as a first-year apprentice, driving along next to your boss. Can't really jump out the window, can you? That's an amber situation. You've got to be aware of what's happening, what we're talking about. Okay? And then there's the red zone. These are the no-go zones. Okay? The red zone is if you are in that situation, you are on hyper alert about what is going on around you. Remember Joseph in the Bible? He got into a red zone. What did he do? You can call it out. What did he do in the red zone? Yeah. Strategy was, I'm in a red zone, I'm out of here. Okay? That's Joseph's red zone. Understand what you're going to do in a red zone before you get there. Okay? What's your strategy? All right, let's have a look at how the Bible shows us this traffic light scenario. Let's have a look at Psalm 1 to begin with. When I read Psalm 1, I want you to ask yourself, are we talking about green zones, orange zones, or red zones? Psalm 1:1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of the sinner, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Okay? At best, orange scenario, isn't it? Most likely more red scenario. There's no green in this bit. Right? That's what the psalmist is saying. But he's also showing us the methodical art of how the world works. Okay? There's 3 key words in there that shows us the way that they're going to lead us astray. They are walking, standing, and sitting. Right? The world will try and walk with us, then just say, do you know what, Andrew, let's just stand here. What are they doing when they're standing next to them? It says, you're just standing in the traffic zone and you're watching the sinners go by. Okay? And then the last scenario is that we're going to sit with them, but it says we're going to sit with them in the seat of the scornful. Do you know who they're scorning? They're scorning God. They're scorning Jesus. They're saying he doesn't exist. They're using his name in vain. And we're sitting there and we're fine with it. You see how the world works? And that is why we need the traffic light scenario. When we are walking with the world, do not listen to their wisdom. Okay? Don't listen to their wisdom. Use God's wisdom to direct our paths. Okay? That's what the Bible says. Okay, so I've given you the traffic light scenario in the Old Testament. Now let's go into the New Testament and have a look. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. This shows you the end game of what the world is going to try and to get us to do. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We're very familiar with the story. It's unpacked for us in Exodus 32 about the golden calf, right? Chapter 10, verse 2, who are we talking about? Those that were baptised, okay? So all those who were baptised into Moses. Verse 3, what were they doing? Well, they were eating the spiritual meat. They were coming to have the bread on a Sunday morning. Verse 4, they're drinking the spiritual drink. They're having the wine on the Sunday morning. And they were meant to be following the rock, and that rock was Christ. Okay? But in verse 5, here comes a problem. That even though they were baptised, even though they were taking the bread and the wine, even though they were trying to follow Christ, it says God wasn't pleased with many of them, and they were overthrown in the wilderness. And so in verse 6, he says, I'm not just bringing this up because I want to rub it in their noses. I'm telling you because I want you to learn how they went wrong. These things are examples to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they lusted. Neither be ye idolaters as some of them, as it is written, here it is here, the traffic light system that went wrong. The people sat down to what? To eat and to drink. This was not the emblems that they were eating of. This was not them drinking of the wine for the emblems, but they sat down and they ate and drank and rose up to play. And it wasn't playing football, it wasn't playing netball. We know this, don't we? We're smart kids. We know what they were doing. And this is the end game for the world. They know that if they walk next to you, stand next to you, that you will eventually sit and have a meal with them. Because then they know that they will fill you with lust and you will play with the world. And so that is what Paul is trying to say to us, is that we've got to have this traffic light situation in our life. We've got to understand that the world is trying to methodically lead us astray. So what does Paul say is some of the greatest ways to not go down this path? Well, it's back in Ephesians chapter 5 where we very first started. Paul says this in verse 16, redeem the time because the days are evil. He says, stop wasting time flirting with the world, of seeing how close we can get before we get burnt. It's like, hey, how cool is this? I only got the tips of my hair and I've got no eyebrows, but I'm okay. But my poor mate, he's in the Royal Adelaide Hospital in the burns ward and you can hardly distinguish who he is. Paul's saying, don't waste your time because you will get burnt. I'll give you a couple of more strategies of mine. Very simple ones, but I have found them so effective over the years. Ephesians 4 verse 22, right? It says this, put off concerning the former conversations that you had with the old man, which is corrupt, according to feeding all your lusts, and be renewed in your spirit of your mind. And that you put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. So verse 22 is talking about the way we speak, doesn't it? It's backed up in verse 29 where it says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. So here's my strategy that I've had for many years as I go through life socially and through business, right? It's a very simple one. I don't swear, right? What has that done for me? What it does is it actually shows everyone else that you have dialogue with that you've chosen a different way of communicating. Okay? It is one of the greatest ways of standing up for the truth, because immediately it makes people say, hey, he's different. I don't know why he's different, but he has chosen not to swear. He's chosen not to be one of us, right? It got more powerful for me one day when I travelled over to Perth, right? Hours away, right? Nowadays you can't even get there because they put a border up, right? But I went there, right, and I had a business meeting. I was in a meeting, never met these people before, and one of them, casually swore in the meeting, and he stopped me. He said, actually, I'm sorry that I swore. I was like, don't even know the guy. He goes, I know that you're a Christian fellow. I thought, wow, that's amazing. I'm not actually preaching the truth. The world is preaching it for me. How good's that? So you can see how the armour works. You put up a barrier, just simple as not swearing. The world will respect you for that. And what it means is that they won't ask you to do certain things because they already know what you must have valued at. On the weekends, on your nights. They must say, you know what, I won't even bother asking Andrew to do certain things or go certain places. I have found it so powerful, so incredibly powerful. So if you can, choose that path. I think it's a wonderful path to choose, especially in a trades-based environment, right? For those one or two tradies that stuck up their hand, right? You choose that path, you'll find that you, in the end, will be respected for it. The other one that I want you to have is a strategy to understand current events, right? And you might say, oh, I'm not very good at current events, right? But just in this room now, 5-10 seconds, right? Just call out something that you think is worrying the world, concerning the world, giving the world anxiety. What do you think they are? Pretty easy. American election, that'd have to be one. Russia. COVID, absolutely. Brad said bushfires at the start of the class. All right. So here's, a few easy ones, isn't it? They're the ones I had, the obvious ones. And the other one that's just come up is the attacks in France. They're just horrific. They are horrific. What people are doing to other people is beyond belief at the moment. And so you hear these sorts of conversations in your working environment, at school, all these sorts of things, right? Key words to look and listen for. These are the key words, right? Have you heard those in conversations? When you hear those words, right, guys? They are beautiful words for a believer, because we do not have the same fear levels. We're not so anxious about what's happening with the world. We are worried, but not so much worried as the people in the world. And they actually themselves say, like the attacks in France, they say that is evil. That is acts of evil. I've actually just realised that I put mental collapse under the American debate. That wasn't intentional, right? Okay, so what's my go-to verse that I may infer in conversation or go directly to? What is it? It's got to be Luke 21, isn't it? Let's have a look. This is the one to always have with you. Okay, it's a very simple one. It comes up in multiple conversations. Luke 21, we're just going to read verse 25 to 28. There'll be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, and upon the earth, what does it say? Upon the earth, distress of nations. Never has there been a time in my lifespan where all the world is struggling with the virus. Never been a time when the whole world is locked up. Financially, we're going to find pain through this world. Never has there been a time when there is distress of nations with perplexity. And what we know is that Jesus is coming back to fix it. The sea and the waves are roaring. Right? Look at that boat. Sea and the waves roaring. Where is the best place to be when the sea and the waves are roaring? It's in the boat, isn't it? Okay? Put in your margin this little simple phrase. Stay in the boat. Okay? When you are being tossed around, right? And you have seasickness, and you think, wow, what is happening to my life? What is happening to the world? What is happening in my own bedroom? And I'm really struggling. Just stay in the boat. That's what God's asking, right? Stay in the boat. What's going to happen in verse 26? Men's hearts failing them for fear, right? There's one of our key words, failing them for fear. Okay? We can use this one. And for looking after those things that are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. You see, you sit there now in your conversations and you have the key to peace. You have the key to peace. Peace within your hearts and peace that you can offer to the world. And you have two choices, really. You stay on the boat and God and Christ can look after you, or you jump overboard and try and see how you go. That's our two options. And so it says in verse 27, "And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." And so here's the little exhortation to us. "And when these things begin to come to pass." Can we say that? You know, at the start of the year, I could say these things haven't quite begun to happen. I now stand here and I go, yes, they've happened. These things are happening. They've begun. When you see these things begin to come to pass, then all you have to do in the boat is look up. Simple, right? Look up. And that's where you're going to get your source of strength from. Lift up your heads. Don't walk around like this, like, oh, it's still too hard. Stand up straight. Be happy. Be proud of being a Christadelphian. Right? People will notice your happiness. Be proud of it. It's a good thing. Right? Look up. Lift up your heads because Jesus Christ is coming. Okay, He's coming. He's the one that's going to solve this mess that the world's in. We're not going to solve it, and the world's not going to solve it. So look up, lift up, and trust that Christ is coming. So young people, really our time has come to an end. You guys are smart guys, right? You're really smart guys. I just want you to take what I have said on board. I want you to listen to the way that you can have strategies in your life and you are able to overcome what the world is going to give you. The world is going to throw it at you. The sea and the waves is going to be chucking waves at you. Stay in that boat, look up, lift up your heads, and you'll be fine. You really will. Together, you can do this. Together, we can all do it. So God bless in your endeavours.